Greetings everyone, Dumelang, Molweni, Sanibonani. Welcome to another educational episode of the Stokvel Revolution podcast. Remember to follow us and subscribe. We are FinLite on Spotify, Iono, and Google Podcast and all other platforms like YouTube. Today's topic is a very interesting one where we are saying investment clubs or Stokvels investing in the JSE. A very, very interesting topic that I think we should really are going to have a great conversation around this because financial markets and Stokvels, but let's hear how it goes. Today we have a man that has been really doing it with his investment club. His name is Njabulo Nsibande, founder of Sakha Ingcebo Investment Club and a personal finance blogger. Njabulo, welcome to our podcast and thank you so much for honoring our invite.
No, thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
I've been following your journey on Twitter around your investment club and how you guys have been investing in ETFs and in the JSE, how you guys have like almost like an investment account as a club, something that was not back then, was not even very popular. Yes, now they have really grown, and that's why I thought it would be really interesting to come and have a conversation about your journey as Ingcebo in this financial markets and the JSE and even the US that you guys have been investing in. But first, in the podcast here, we have a theme question where we want to know what is your personal experience or your first encounter with a Stokvel?
So like I grew up in a township. So like Stokvels have always been like an integral part of the community in like various different ways, from umshayelo to saving for groceries like in December and that sort of thing. So I've always been exposed to those kind of Stokvel, but I've always also felt they were ineffective in a way. Like they were not to say they were not useful or anything. They were very useful, but they could have been made better. Because always, like for example, in Shiloh and we would just rotate, giving each other money. We would all, for all intents and purposes, they were borrowing each other money, and all helping each other save money, however you want to look at it. And I always felt it's just better to just put that money in the bank. And as I grew older, I understood why they were doing that. Why, instead of just putting the money in the bank, why they were rotating money. Because then I was just young, stupid, and naive. And one of the most important, is like now I'm older looking back, one of the most important reasons why they were doing that was accountability. So, if you alone set yourself a goal to save, say, 1,000 rand a month, and it's going to be harder if you just do it on your own. But if you set a goal, like it's the 10 of us, and we all want to save 1,000 rand a month, and we rotate giving each other the 1,000, it's the exact same thing, but except now you're more accountable. Because when you're alone, life just happens mid-month or whatever.
I'll do it next month.
I'll skip this month, I'll do double next month. But within a Stokvel environment, you can't do that because the members will hold you accountable. So, growing up, when I always just wanted, to create like a wealth builder. I always wanted to create wealth for myself. I always wanted a way out. I always wanted a retirement that was better than what my parents had. Because once income stopped, like employment stopped for my parents,
that's it.
Money stopped. So I wanted something different for myself. So as soon as I started working, I just went to, search various ways where I could do that. That would still fit my pocketbook.
Very, very interesting. You already touched a bit on yourself. I was saying before we get to Sakha Ingcebo Investment Club, I want to get to know Njabulo. Tell us just a brief background about yourself and your investing world and why you decided to collaborate doing Sakha.
So I'm so I'm just gonna take it like from where I am and reverse it. I'm a trader. I trade the JSE markets. I trade equities. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, doing it well. That and also a blogger, like sharing my story. And I'm a type of person that likes to learn and share what they've learned. So as soon as when I bumped into financial markets, I think it was 2016, somewhere there's about when I was still an intern. And just seeing someone charting stuff was just intriguing, and at the time, getting rich quick was a thing.
Getting rich quick.
So I went on that venture to kind of learn how this thing works and see if I could do it. I always had that confidence in myself. Anything that needs figuring out, I'll figure it out. I saw a pivotal, like a video that changed everything for me. It was done by Simon. So it was doing a talk on index investing. From stock investing, and he put together how investments work. From what it means to buy a company, as a small investor, and how to construct a portfolio, and why instead of just coming up with your own portfolio, it's just better to buy an index. It was just making that case, and for me, it just made sense. It's just went down that rabbit hole because man, that's a rabbit hole to go to, and then I picked up an interest in trading, and then there was a Money Web event at the convention center. And this was after I've learned, started listening to the Fed Wallet podcast.
I remember that money.
Yeah, I remember
used
that.
To be there.
Yeah. I went to that event. And I just went there with just a bag of questions, and they were questions just for me. I had no intentions of starting an investment club or anything like that. It was just for me to understand how this thing works. Because it's one thing to learn something or to read about something; it's another to actually do it. I just wanted to do something, So when I went to the event, I just asked questions from the guys at Easy Equities, ETFSA, just all over the place. Just asking questions. People at Stokvel.
It was the first time that actually included Stokvels in anything that financial now.
I was just asking questions all over the place. And then I had a conversation with Mike Brown from ETFSA. And he just nonchalantly mentioned it in passing. Like, you can do this in a Stokvel environment.
He loves Stokvels.
Wait, let's just, reverse all.
He actually has a product of Stokvels.
And he told me more about it. This was after we discussed tax-free and all that. And I'm sure it was like a 30 minutes to an hour conversation, just detailing to me how these things, like Stokvels work and how it would work at the JSE. And I'd already made up my mind that ETFs and like stock markets is where I want to be. And then when I went home, the first thing I did was to set up a debit order with ETFSA to invest for myself in my tax-free account. And I was like, maybe if we do this as a but let's put this money at the JSE since there's a way to do it. I contacted the guys at ETFSA, contacted the guys at Easy Equities to see which better platform to do it. And what I liked about that approach was, if I'm going it alone, it's too risky. I don't know anything. But if we go together, we can share the risk, we can share the learning, we can split out the learning.
Teaching moment. So we have a bit of teaching moments where we're really going to stop you there when you are dropping bombs that you right now. Very important. One of the things that is great about being in an investment club or a Stokvel when you are investing is definitely the shared risk and the shared insight or the shared exposure or the shared education that you collectively do it when you are doing this thing. And most also, but we're also going to touch on that, you're actually even sharing the investment fees in that sense when you are doing it as a group. But back to what we are talking about, when Njabulo, I think we are kind of getting how then you got to really think about how about we share the risk and to raise more capital in order to invest in these ETFs. And is that the background then of Sakha Ingcebo Investment Club? How did you convince the other guys to actually say, okay guys, let's start this?
So Nicolette posted a video on, I think it was on Facebook. Yeah, I think it was on Facebook. She posted a video making an example of a property Stokvel of people putting 5,000 rands together, and if there's 10 of them, I think that's like 500,000 or something of that sort. And like it just made sense, you know. But except I didn't have 5,000 rands to play with, and least of all in the property market where I didn't know anything. But I could, since that conversation with Mike Brown, I knew that at least I can do it with 500 rand. Then that's workable, and then we can take it from there and see what happens. Right, and that's where I started. I recruited about 20 people. 20
that you know?
No, it was all my friends. I recruited 20 of like.
And they bought into it.
I recruited 20 friends. No, they didn't. A, because I didn't know what I was talking about. B, every Stokvel that we knew up to that point was either had a 1 year span. We're starting in January, December, we're splitting it out. And I was talking about 10 years.
Yo, you didn't even say that.
I was talking about a 10-year span, which we put in money for 5 years and then we let it grow for another 5. So it's a total investment horizon of 10 years. And no one was like, everyone was.
You mean I won't get my money for 10 years?
10 years is a long time.
You are contributing for 5 years?
And that number shrunk down to about 7. And that 7 shrunk down to 3 because of that 10-year span. And
long term.
Markets do this thing. They don't
go
up in a straight line. You know?
Very interesting. But with the members that you have in your investment club right now, what exactly are you investing in the JSE? Even if you're just doing JSE, are you also doing the US market? What are you doing as a club? What are you investing in? So
we invested in ETFs. So initially the idea was we were going to have half of our portfolio in ETF and then another half in stocks. And then it quickly dawned to us that we didn't know how to pick stocks. We didn't know what to look for in stocks, as many people don't. And then we settled on just ETFs. We hold Cetrix 40, we hold emerging markets. No, Cetrix 40, Cetrix World, global property, and we hold the Purple Group. Right, the Purple Group only came in later.
As a stock.
Only came in later. It only came when, as you know, I went further and further in researching around financial markets. I'm like, okay, this is a stock to buy.
Research, very important.
I was looking for the next Capitec, and I think Purple is doing the same thing Capitec did 20 years ago.
Very true.
If you can take that and think 10, 20 years forward, Easy Equities is doing what Capitec did 20 years ago. So that's why we added Purple Group into the portfolio. And that portfolio...
So mostly ETFs and just one stock?
Yeah, it's just ETFs, yes.
How long have you guys been doing?
Since 2018. So we're on our 5th year now. Fifth year now. When this is the year where we were supposed to last time to contribute. But we've decided to continue.
Because also the market...
Because now we can trust, you see this thing kind of works.
And you have learned, most importantly. So now there's few of you guys, and that's how your portfolio is looking in terms, are you doing it Easy Equities and ETF SA or just one?
Just Easy Equities. It's just few, and it's better. It's better when it's few because there's less disagreements, there's less arguments. It's just better because there's fewer people. But now we could, if we want to add more people because we have the admin stuff done. You know, it's almost like most of the things that we do are automated. if we want to, we could. We just decided not to. We just didn't want the headache of the admin and whatnot. So just
a lot of people, and there's a lot of admin and investment
Yeah.
clubs. What informed your decision as a club to choose ETFs specifically?
So think of investing in financial markets as a game. Financial markets is a game, right? And there are rules to the game, and the money is just a scorecard. It's just how you keep track if you're doing well. But it's just a game, and every game has rules, and every game has laws that govern the game, right? One of the rules of investing is diversification, right? And there's diversification and diversification. You can out diversify yourself out of return, and you can concentrate yourself out of return as well. The reason why we picked ETFs, we sat and thought, what are the odds that we're going to pick African Bank? Then it was African Bank. It wasn't Steinhoff that we were using as an example. And the odds were high because we didn't know anything. So it was just better to buy the hamper or to buy the entire group, because even if we happened to pick Steinhoff within the group, when Steinhoff happened, the top 40 was down like 1%. Steinhoff was down like 70 or 90% on the day, right? But with the top 40, it was down only 1%.
Balancing each other.
So it was easier for us to just pick instant diversification and to also pick geographical diversification, because we couldn't just invest in South Africa because we already over-invested in South Africa by living in South Africa. We needed to extend our investments into offshore through ETFs. We didn't have to set up anything special or.
Very interesting. You are dropping very big names. What diversification, ETFs, and putting it in one. So I also find a bit of teaching there, or a bit of insight. And Stokvels, as you know, ETFs are like a basket of shares within it when you are buying. So it will be a basket full of all these companies, your MTN, your African banks, put by professional and in one basket. So instead of buying the individual companies, they are actually already pre-selected for you. So when you are buying, you're just buying the basket of it. And that's how they de-risked themselves, because they didn't have the education, the insight. Of course, now with experience and research, they have more knowledge in how to pick shares or a stock. So the most important thing as a new investor that we need to understand, even as a member of a Stokvel, when you want to go into investing into the JSE, for example, do determine how the knowledge of your members in terms of that, and especially their risk appetite. In my book, I actually wrote about a checklist that you would need to do as a group in order to determine your risk appetite, or what type of risk takers you have within the Stokvel, in order to actually determine what type of investment you should be going into. But typically, usually new investors go for ETFs because of that exactly, the fact that you don't have to buy or know the deep research of a certain stock in order to invest all your money in there and concentrate on that. But in an ETF, there's a bit of diversification. Diversification, as I was saying, Njabulo is putting big words, just means you are not putting your eggs in one basket. You are rather putting them in different things, but you are finding them still in one thing with an ETF. So that is a great teaching moment that you would need to consider as a new Stokvel members that are interested in investing in the market. But continuing with our conversation, Njabulo, you were talking about that you are already heavily invested as a club in South Africa. You wanted to expand to something that is outside, and you could find that also within ETFs. Are you guys investing only in the JSE, or are you also doing something outside the JSE? How are you structuring your portfolio as a club right now with the experience you have and the insight that you have learned over the years?
Now, we 100% at the JSE, we are 100%, well, with an exception of Purple, we are 100% in ETFs. And the reason for that is risk appetite, right? And knowing the risks that are involved in markets. And as a leader of the investment club, I didn't want to put my members at, like just putting it at on the lion's den. So we just at the JSE and only in ETFs. And a point I want to make also around ETFs is if you think of what an ETF is, it's more than just a basket of stocks. An ETF is actually a Stokvel on its own.
It is actually.
Right. The problem with the word Stokvel is that we've informalized it way too much, right? To a point where we don't take advantage of
what it comes
what it comes with. If you look at
what is potential even.
If you look at Citrix 40, for example, it has when I checked, when I did this research, it was I think 2 or 3 years ago, it had 61,000 investors, and it had about, I stand corrected, about 4 billion in assets. So there was 61,000 people who own 4 billion in assets. And Citrix does nothing special. They just go on the JSE and pick the top 40 companies and go buy them. Nothing special there. Except if you want to if they don't have 4 billion on their own, but they have 60,000 people
investors
whom they can pull 4 billion from.
Sounds exactly like a Stokvel.
Right. It's exactly a Stokvel, right? And we could, as you know, I think you mentioned earlier, not on this show, but you mentioned earlier that there's about 50 billion circulating in Stokvel in townships. That is informal. That 50 billion, just imagine if that 50 billion can grow 10% a year for the next 50 years. What that 50 billion could be if we don't start and stop that 50 billion every year as a community. It could be massive.
It should definitely be massive. I really hope. But what do you think? I really hope that the numbers, my wish always with the Stokvel, when this 50 billion thing comes up in my head, is always saying we might not be able to convert the whole 50 billion into an investment that can actually create wealth. But at the rate where we are in, even 10% of that 50 billion would be great. If the industry, 10% of that industry could be channeled into wealth creating type of investments. But I also understand the lack of education, the lack of insight, the lack of exposure, the lack of red tape that is not allowing groups to be able to partake in such opportunities. And that's where I want to go into exactly in terms of yes, now there's a lot of things that Stokvels are doing as Stokvels or have using the Stokvel model, whether it's using a legal entity or not, but specifically with investing with the JSE. When you opened your account as a club, was it tedious? Did they want a lot of things? Was it manual? What was the administrative challenges that you encountered when you were trying to do this as a club?
To be honest, none, except for getting us in one place. That was the only challenge, because the only thing that was needed was a constitution, which is just an agreement of how we're going to work, which I think that being enforced is very beneficial because it gets us having uncomfortable conversation up front, because we don't want, for example, we don't want to be discussing what happens if you pass away when you've passed away. We want to have that conversation before you pass away, or if you lose your job and unable to continue. We don't want to have that conversation when you've lost your job, because now there's emotions, there's having a constitution to guide some of those things was quite important. So the only thing that we needed was a bank account in the name of the investment club. And for the bank to give us that bank account, we just needed, I think it was 500 Rand, and a constitution and FICA documents for 3 members. And that was it. And Easy Equities just wanted the same documents and the bank statement, and that was it. There was no any, other than getting people to be in the same place. There was no any.
Why did you need to be in the same place again?
Because you have to go to the bank and sign.
Oh, oh I'm getting that. Oh, we need that also. The bank sorting that out, please, bankers. So it is one of the things that is holding us back as Stokvels. But I always hear this thing that is so administrative to be in a Stokvel, to be able to do these things. As you can hear, to open an easy equities account, and we're not even promoting them in this podcast, but it is the truth. I've helped a lot of Stokvels be able to open your easy equities account or your TFSA type of accounts. They literally want the things that they would have wanted to you, even if you're an individual. The only extra 2 things that they actually need is the constitution and the authorizing letter, because obviously they don't want to deal with all 20 of you. If there's 20 of you, they want a person that you guys have appointed to deal with for investment purposes. So don't worry as a Stokvel in terms of how do you get to participate in the JSE. The only thing that I needed, as Njabulo said, to open an account with any broker, whether it's Easy Equities, whether it's TFSA, Standard Bank, there's quite a few in the market right now, is a constitution, an authorizing letter, and a bank account in the Stokvel's name, and your normal FICA document. Not a lot of admin, right? But just to close off, second last before we close off actually, why do you think it's important for Stokvels and investment club to start participating or invest in the JSE, especially in our economy?
Firstly, because if you look at our market, right, the JSE, and you pick any random 20-year period, you'll hardly ever find, in fact, if you pick any random 10-year period, you would hardly ever find any random negative 10-year period. There's very few of them. And if you look at that from a probabilistic standpoint, your odds of winning are infinitely higher. So with all this wealth that we're generating as communities and as investment clubs, we could grow that by, the upper limits to that is unknown. And the only risk we're taking is that we lose the money that, the little money that we have. That's the only risk that we have. The only risk is 100%, but the upside, is unknown. That gives us what we call an asymmetric trade, because the downside is very limited, but your upside, how high can these things go? You never know.
Very, very, very true. I think one of the things that the mindset of a Stokvel being short term and is what could be the challenge for Stokvels when it comes to investing in the JSE. I also know the probability of 10 years versus the short term. So if you are a Stokvel or an investment club that want to invest in the JSE, you totally have to have a long-term vision rather than a short term that is usually popular among Stokvels. Chances of you losing your money in a short term in the JSE are very high, but chances of you making a sizable money in the long term, that is 5 years and above, are quite higher. So one of the things to learn from that is that you have to have a long-term view if you're going into that. And the JSE itself also operates almost like a Stokvel. I've got a friend of mine who likes saying these pension funds, the ETFs, the JSEs, where contributions are concerned, where they actually need individual investors, they're all Stokvels that went to private school. Why can't we as Stokvels emulate that or do something like that in order to really participate, but for the greater or for the good of the economy? And we are aware that things are really bad right now. It's looking all red in the JSE, but remember, in the short term, in the longer term, you are probably gonna see a lot of greens no matter what happens. So you must be willing to get into the fire and nyamezela, as we would like to say, for a long term.
I just want to add on, the long-term view, right? Whenever people who plant trees don't plant trees for themselves, they plant trees for, whoever's coming after them, right? Bo Mandela, Steve Biko, Hani, and all of them are fighting for a different cause, right? And our youth Now we're fighting for economic freedom. But you're not fighting for economic freedom for ourselves, but for the next generation, that when our kids come, they have something better to start off with, right? So when we're starting these, like my holdings in my investment club, they're not my own, they're for my kids. You know, because I'll work until I die, and then whatever that's left, that's for my kids.
We're talking about generational wealth.
You know, I'm not building all these things for myself. You know, this tree is going to give shade to my kids and to the grandkids, and 10 generations down the line. You know.
Very, very, very important that in working together, we are also able to do such things in generational wealth. And my last point is that Black people have a very low participation in the JSE, whether it's from the listed company themselves, the people that actually sit in the boards of the listed companies, to the investors that actually invest in the JSE through different ways. How do you envision the future of changing this via investment clubs? In that way, as we know, Stokvels and investment clubs are full of Black people. How do you envision, if we participate more in the JSE as clubs, as people, especially because clubs bring affordability. Not everybody's got 100K that will be able to invest in the JSE, but 10 of us can have 100K and still be able to do the same thing, just to improve this low participation of Black people, and also creating wealth for ourselves too. How ideally would you want to see Black people investing in the JSE in the future?
I think firstly by changing mindset, and also, and I really, really hate this, where knowledgeable Black people go to other unknowledgeable Black people to exploit them. Right? You come and say, hey, invest in this Bitcoin thing, and come and I'll be your mentor. Because what happens there is, if I come to you and say, come, I'll be your mentor, or come and I'll invest in this Bitcoin thing, and then you lose money, and then Njabulo comes, different Njabulo. Njabulo comes.
We have another Njabulo here.
Njabulo comes to you and says, hey man, look, you can buy these ETF things at the JSE, but from your experience, you're like, hey man, these things of saving money,
I get that a lot.
is very risky. So if you can first change that kind of behavior, that you don't go into just because you know how to exploit people and how naive people can get, just because you can exploit that, you don't have to.
Because you are rotting even people that had good intentions, because now people are losing trust to anything, even genuine. And
you're stealing clients from Black portfolio managers of the future. Because now, if I come as a Black portfolio manager, as a Black fund manager, you're like, no, I'd rather take my money to Old Mutual or to Liberty or whatever the case may be, because I can't have trust in you, right? And as far as investing in the JSE is concerned, look, we have many problems as a country, like plenty problems as a country. And some of those problems are created by ourselves, right? Because, first of all, like the distribution of ownership of companies at the JSE, it being white-owned, granted it's historical, right? But no one is pointing a gun at us and telling us not to invest in the JSE.
Nobody.
No one. If you want to go invest it, you can. No one's stopping you, right? And take what's happening at Sibanye, for example, right? Now we can pick it and do all day long and say he's getting paid way too much. But if we go and buy as an investment club, we go and buy some shares at Sibanye, we can have a say there. Because we can go to an AGM and say, no, this guy is getting paid way too much.
That is so strange. What a coincidence.
So we can buy these different companies and have a say. We can have like a philanthropic investment club that says, we're going to buy badly run companies and change how they run.
Have a say.
We're going to buy untransformed companies and transform them however we want. Because once we want to buy, it's now my company. You're accountable to me as a shareholder. And if I buy enough of that company, I have a bigger say. And there's imagine that 50 billion, how much say it can
Influence.
have. Even if it's just
I like
5%
that
of it.
futuristic thinking
have
that
a
can
say.
happen now, and we can start it
It
now.
can create a major dent. And not just at the JSE. We have an investment club, thousands. We invest in small businesses. We can change.
There's influence
If
in
we
numbers.
can also the mindset that we need to change is that short-term mindset. We have to think not
True.
just for today or tomorrow. We have to act in a manner that's better for us, not just today but in 10 years. Right, and in investing in small companies and small businesses that actually create work and create jobs for people, and don't just invest today and expect the money tomorrow.
A lot of us are.
Some businesses
That's our
take
biggest
years.
challenge. We are
Businesses take
scared to
years.
wait, even when we have de-risked it with us sharing the risk and the knowledge. We still not patient enough to wait to wait for that long haul and to go through the dumps. And then eventually after years going up. And I hope with more exposure, with more education, that we are having these conversations, that we are able to actually influence people to be able to have a more of a long term view, especially when you've got the power of the numbers.
Because you're going to be here in 20 years.
We're not dying anytime
So
soon.
you're going to be here with money or here broke.
It's your choice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Njabulo. I really appreciate our conversation today, and I want to close off with this, that if we want to influence the JSE and more Black people to participate in there, we need the numbers for participation. And we have the numbers as investment clubs and Stokvels. We can actually have a say in the companies that we invest in if more and more of us can be able to do that. You see, in this podcast, we are all about the knowledge that as a Stokvel member that you want to know. But most importantly, we want to create wealth managers that also understand this industry in terms of how they can pull up the Stokvels in order to get into these different opportunities that we are always discussing this. Another investment club might be more interested in a business outside the JSE. Another investment club might prefer the JSE listed businesses. Whichever one you prefer, remember, investment and long term has a higher chance of succeeding rather than what we are known for as Stokvel, the short-term thing. I hope the lesson of long-term also does really goes straight to home in terms of that while we're having this conversation. Njabulo, thank you for inspiring Stokvels and Investment Club to participate in the JSE. It is definitely one of the ways to revolutionize this industry, and having examples like Sakha Ingcebo investment clubs, it's really great, and I wish you the best. I can't wait to see your portfolio in 10 years' time, especially when you guys stop contributing, because a lot of investment clubs, their goal is that if you can get to that point where we are stopping to contribute, we just contribute, we just investing dividends, we know we are on, we really built something out of here. Do you have any last words, your social media, your podcast that you'd like our viewers to look out for?
So first, we have a spreadsheet that keeps track of our portfolio. So I leave the
Here's a tool.
It will help you if keep track of your portfolio and its performance. Both
is it free?
Yeah, for free.
Oh, please send us. We're gonna share that with if you're an investment club that is trying to invest in the
even as an individual,
actually trying to invest in the JSE, Njabulo is offering us a free spreadsheet. These things you pay for, we're gonna get for free. Thank you, Njabulo.
And then to keep track of members and that sort of thing. And you can check out my podcast, the Village Trader Podcast.
The Village Trader Podcast.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Spotify, Google, Apple, everywhere good podcasts are there. And on Twitter, I'm at Village Trader ZA and Njabulo _Goche as well on Twitter, and Njabulo Nsibande on Facebook. And I don't have Instagram.
Not anymore.
TikTok.
Oh, you better get on those. But thank you very
Yeah.
much for sharing that with us. Please follow Njabulo. Really great. One of my favorite investment trap stories. And we have brought you here exclusively on the Stokvel Revolution podcast. Remember, we are creating wealth. We are learning about wealth. We are building wealth. We are great investors, but we are very educated people that want to make the Stokvels be the greatest that they can be. Thank you very much. I am Palesa Lengolo. This is the Stokvel Revolution podcast.
Thank you.
Unbelievable. Property, housing, skills. This is revolution. Stokvel for every rural, blockchain, crypto, women, wealth and wealth. Podcast. This is heaven. Revolution. Podcast. We are coming for everything.